Hey folks, it is Vince the Evil DM. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video here today. I'm going to do a little commentary. I saw this tweet come out by PBS of all places NewsHour. The rules of Dungeons and Dragons were written by an racial essentialist. As the tabletop gaming community becomes more diverse, players and creators are trying to rewrite them. I don't know, that just ticked me off reading that and seeing that coming from PBS. While I know PBS isn't the greatest place in the world, PBS, I don't know. I didn't expect something like this from PBS. Again, this is commentary I'll be doing here for PBS, and I don't know. It's just annoying. But we'll get into the article here, and I'll read it for you and break it down and stuff like that, because I don't agree with it. Now, if you want to check this out, I'll put some links in the description below. You can check them out yourself and things like that. Comment how you wish. But here we go. Okay, so how a generation of gamers is pushing for inclusivity beyond the table. For decades, players of tabletop role-playing games have used dice and pen and paper to engage in a form of entertainment that combines collective storytelling with strategic puzzle solving and combat simulation. Very true. We did that as in a form of escapism from life, and we get together with our friends, and we'd have a good old time just playing these types of games constantly. Once considered a niche hobby, very much true so. It was not a big thing back in the 80s and 90s. So, and I remember being in college, and you would say you played role playing games, people would laugh at you, or oh, you play D&D, something like that. These types of games are experiencing a boost in mainstream visibility thanks to Netflix Stranger Things. Thanks. And the Dungeons and Dragons movie that's coming up called Honor Among Thieves, which looks absolutely atrocious, by the way, but we'll give it a shot because maybe it's good. I don't know. The last couple ones were disastrous, and I think Mythica or Mythic Quest, I think Mythica or something like that was probably the closest thing I've ever seen to a actual D&D type movie out there. Check that out if you haven't. According to industry estimates, hobby gaming sales soared during the pandemic from 1.6 billion in 2019 to over 2.6 billion in 2021. Well, we were all stuck at home with nothing to do, so it was going to play video games, watch TV, or bang your head against the wall. So it's obviously something like D&D is going to get picked up. You can sit at your computer, grab your webcam and sit with your buddies and play over Discord or Skype or whatever method you have, Teams, Zoom, whatever. And the best part about that was that when you were done, you can just click goodbye and you can decompress and walk away have fun. Unlike in person, sometimes you get overwhelmed, and that's why a lot of people didn't do it, because they didn't want to be in the social situation, and you can't just go like that and people disappear unless you're Thanos. So it increased. They go over a little bit. Go away. Go a little bit over what happened, and then they start getting into it. Okay. As tabletop RPGs permeate popular culture through the podcast, live stream, internet shows, and celebrity boosters, the community surrounding them is becoming more diverse. It always has been diverse. It's not becoming more. It always has been, but we'll get into that later. Traditionally seen as a pastime for white male suburbanites, not true. Tabletop gaming has more recently become a platform for minorities and marginalized people to tell their own stories. There was nothing stopping anybody from playing Dungeons and Dragons other than maybe the ability to buy the books because they didn't have the money to buy the books, or because they didn't have the money. I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of money, and my parents wouldn't buy it for me because it was Dungeons and Dragons. It's evil, Catholic Church is coming after me, things like that. I'm going to become a Satanist, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go kill people in my spare time in the tunnels like Tom Hanks. Right. There was nothing stopping anybody from playing the game. The people that were in our groups were diverse. I mean, when I was growing up, my GM, or actually DM, was DM Joe, as I've told him many stories for Roll for Initiative. And even here on my channel, he was Vietnamese, I believe. His sister played as well. We had another friend who was, we called him, his real name was Manny, but everybody called him Frankie. I'm not sure where that, I never asked him where it came from. We all called him Frankie. He was from the Dominican Republic. He played constantly with us. We had another guy that was from Portugal. We had a guy that came in from Italy at one point who was an exchange student, played Dungeons and Dragons with us. We had various girls play with us from different races. It doesn't really, or ethnic backgrounds, should say races, ethnic backgrounds. It doesn't, nothing was stopping anybody except for their own fear and this image that they're putting in their head. So, people of color and women have always been a part of tabletop culture. Yes, they have been, says this person here, Stephen. And he specializes in the male-dominated subcultures. But actual play shows, the term name for it's actually actual play podcast, which turned into actual play videos or shows, which a lot of them are scripted. The term for tabletop role-playing games performed for audiences give them more visibility. I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce this name. So Abria is something of a celebrity and game master, someone who facilitates tabletop RPG sessions for players at a table. She's appeared on many popular play channels such as Critical Role and Dimension 20. I've never heard of Dimension 20, but Critical Role, we all know about that one. As well as shows directly sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, the company that owns Dungeons and Dragons, unfortunately. While playing, she gravitates towards non-human characters like elves and merfolk. Oh, okay. That's what you want to play, then that's what you want to play. Growing up and acculturated as other on several axes of identity, my brain automatically defaults to that. Who is black and a member of the LGBT community? Okay, cool. Even though it's uncomfortable to be othered constantly, othered? It is what I know and it feels right. ... I guess that's a quote they were taking. There's not the trauma attached to the otherization, so it feels like a fun opportunity to play a what if being marketed differently came from with benefits. When she was new to tabletop gaming, she would often go to the local gaming store to play in the community events organized by Wizards of the Coast. But she sometimes felt like an outsider in a space where mostly the players were white men. I don't know where she's from, so I can't really comment on that. But yeah, you might see a lot of white males there. So what? They're not going to say anything. They're going to welcome you at the table because they'd be happy for someone to play with them and actually play the game. That's how we felt back then in the 80s and 90s. Anybody we played, we were like, yes! And we extended our arms out to, grasp them in and pull them into the, the game. Those were uncurated tables where things got very monoculture very quickly, she said. Ugh, whatever. Recently, actual plays have been finding port with a new generation of gamers, many of whom come from diverse backgrounds. Social media allows fans of these shows to form communities and organize meetups where they can play games where they watch. Play the games that they watch. So nothing stopped them from doing it before, and I don't see what social media is allowing to do now, because you could have done that anytime you wanted in your life. You didn't need social media for that. So we go on. Ah, boy. This new guard of hobby geeks are highly aware, and if they are not directly biopic people, they're our allies, says Aaron, an assistant professor of informatics of UC Irvine. But even with these gaming communities, there is some friction. The old school Renaissance, or the OSR, is a gaming movement whose players claim that they are against outside politics permeating their gaming space. These players support the use of traditional fantasy tropes in gaming design, such as the existence of good and evil races with no nuisance. OSR gamers are often seen as the old guard of tabletop gaming and tend to idolize the past, which defaults to white masculine worldviews. No, they do not. They just want to play a game to escape, and this is how the races and everything were presented. Goblins are evil, orcs are evil, us as player characters are the heroes, and we're supposed to kill them. That's how it is. Created in 1970, Dungeons & Dragons is one of the first and most prominent tabletop RPGs, and race has been a key in the character design. Duh. When players create their in-game personas, they generally choose different aspects from a menu that culminates in an imaginary character with history, personality, physical traits, and special talents. Characters can be one of many different races, in quotes, such as human, elves, or dwarves. These Character types could be considered various species. Some resemble real animals, while others are more like dragons or even angels. But the different beings have always been racially coded, with humans specifically having always been seen for the analogy for white. No, human representing all the normal people in the world, like us, that we're the humans. Everybody's the humans that play the game. Duh. Didn't represent white people. Dungeons and Dragons has a tradition of promoting humans as the best or most versatile characters. Yes, they did. And there's a reason for that. Gary Gygax, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, was a self-described biological determinist. He believed that different races of people were biologically distinct and capable of different things in life. This can be seen in early D&D with non-humans and demi-humans having level caps. Yes, he gave them level caps to even out the fact that humans didn't have anything special about them. Elves, dwarves, gnomes, and halflings all had abilities, bonuses to their statistics, bonuses to their attributes, however you want to say it, not attributes, attributes. And he gave the humans their bonus was they're able to go to whatever level they wanted as their benefit, as opposed to getting a +1 to this and a +2 to that, and being able to see in the dark and be able to, because all the demi races all had these things that they had on. All right, so this means that an early edition of the rules, non-human characters can never achieve the same degree of growth as human characters. Not true, but whatever. Additionally, oh, and by the way, for this, I can tell you how many times most game masters ignored those rules anyway. In fact, or with AD&D, you couldn't play a dwarf, couldn't be a cleric. I can't tell you how many times the GMs would be like, who cares? Just play it. Even before Unearthed Arcana came out, people were just like, just play, who cares? Remember, books are guidelines, not the final thing, not the say-all. You are the game master. You are the dungeon master. You rule the game, not the other way around. But these people don't get that because they have to have everything written out for them. Anyway. Additionally, orcs were initially created as a group of bestial humanoids with the sole purpose of being killed by players. Yes, because they're evil. The classic evil race could not be chosen by players for their characters until 1993 with the release of the complete Book of Humanoids. No, that's not true. You could have played it in any edition, and I think Gygax even says it at AD&D that you can allow players to play monster races. I don't remember what page it was on, but I've seen it in the Dungeon Master's Guide for AD&D. I can't quote on basic D&D. I'm pretty sure it'll probably be in there somewhere. I think the original little brown books or the little box sets even had the ability to play monster races or quoted in there, allowing, it's not a good idea, he says, but he says you can play them. With the release of the complete Book of Humanoids, the source book for the second edition of Dungeons & Dragons, the works of J.R.R. Tolkien are credited as an inspiration for Dungeons & Dragons with the game's own Appendix N. As Tolkien described orcs as a xenophonic vernacular of the 1950s Britain. Over the years, through subsequent editions of the game, these racial allusions have been generally minimized. In the summer of 2020, amid the reckoning on race and inclusion through the many industries, Wizards of the Coast released a statement outlining steps it was taken to help everyone feel at home around the game table and to see a positive reflections of themselves within our product. We didn't need to do it. There was never an issue. And I'm actually tired of hearing things like this. But for every 2 steps forward, we take 1 step back, this guy says, citing a recent publication inclusion of a Sumerian race of humanoids, reminiscent of old minstrel shows. Oh, what do you mean, gypsies? Wizards of the Coast also recently presented a new vernacular for the upcoming rules change to the game. Instead of instances of race, they changed it with species. So we're playing an outer space game and we're all aliens now. I see. At best, I think this was the earnest appeal to fans that Wizards of the Coast is taking the representation of race seriously in its games, but at its worst, I really think that this may quash some of the important dialogue that is happening around the topic within the fans' communities. The problem never was that race was a concept in fantasy world. Instead, it has been that the fantasy worlds are the product of any number of white supremacist tropes that mirror those in our own world. No. This issue was never really race, but essentialism. And essentialism is baked into the system of D&D in its DNA. I think many people would consider it a completely different game. A race, species give advantages and disadvantages. Wait, I read that too fast. I think many people would consider it a completely different game as race, as species, give advantages and disadvantages, and there needs to be checked and balanced in systems for parity, consistency, and fun. There was never an issue with anything. There was never an issue with anything. And most DMs, if they didn't like something, they just changed it to what they wanted to do. I guarantee if you look at some of the old AD&D stuff on Obsidian Portal, and all the AD&D websites out there that didn't get taken down by $R, you people know that from the second edition era and the first edition era. You remember that during the AOL time. They started taking down all the websites for copyright and stuff like that. It was quite a fun time, right? Anyway, so you will see the various races that people made, various additions and subtractions and adjustments of human races, of elves, of dwarves, things like that, just to make things different. So it's not like we really needed it. We did it on our own. But, these people can't understand it because it's not written in the book for them plain to see that. Some game systems outside C&D are doing away with the races, defining an aspect of player characters altogether, while other systems are engaging in stories and worlds with non-white and non-Eurocentric designs. Monty Cook, owner of Monty Cook Games and former Dungeons & Dragons designer, developed a system-agnostic game system, meaning it can be used to tell stories in many different games. A distinguishing feature that is a player can create characters without needing to consider race or species for mechanical perks. Race and class are pre-made buckets that you fill, he said. By focusing on who your characters are, it gives players more control. I'm not going to comment on Monty Cook. While there are no in-game mechanical benefits to choosing a particular race, Monty Cook Games tries to encourage diversity through artwork. The artwork they commission tries to be inclusive by showing women in the Wild West or children of color exploring haunted house. Sometimes the art depicts people wearing masks so they can imagine themselves or their character in those situations. Okay? I mean, most women in the Wild West were probably not the ones you're going to see in his drawings, but sure. Whatever you want to do, makes yourself happy. We want everyone to feel welcome, to feel seen, Cook said. Beyond those who play the games, what is often overlooked is the community of people creating and marketing them. When he started in the business, Cook said all the designers and artists and editors were of similar backgrounds and ethnicities. But he is seeing this culture changing and becoming more diverse. We want people of all types in the driver's seat, he said. There was never stopping anybody from being in the driver's seat, Monty Cook. One example is Coyote and Crow, a new game focused on telling specifically indigenous stories. The more I wanted to create a setting that didn't have a colonialism was part of the structure at all, the more I realized the only way to strip it out of the setting was to create an alternate future where colonization never happened, said Connor Alexander, the creator of Coyote and Crow, which has a First Nation setting and themes. I think I've seen that, and Yep, so he sold his game with, blah, 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 yep. Alexander sees the growth of popularity of actual plays as the first step to growing diversity within the hobby. There was never a problem. Unfortunately, I know. Just because I've never seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I understand. Thank you. I'm getting that comment out of the way right now. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any breakthrough shows yet that has displayed this kind of diversity that I want to see. None, huh? Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of good actual plays out there with a lot of great folks, but none of them are broken through in a way I want to see them break through yet. And part of that is due to the dominance of Dungeons & Dragons. Just go to YouTube and type in Dungeons & Dragons actual play. You'll see a plethora of diverse groups. You haven't seen that. Oh my God. In a recent investor meeting, Wizards of the Coast, Cynthia Williams, described Dungeons & Dragons as under-monetized. The company's goal is to increase product targeting players even after they have purchased the source books needing to play. One of the biggest draws from Dungeons & Dragons and the tabletop is the relatively low cost of investment to start. Once players buy a rulebook, they can keep playing indefinitely. limited only by their own imaginations. Right there. Limited by your own imagination. Again, the book is a guideline. Imagination freedom is what gives minorities and marginalized people the opportunity to build worlds that center on their own stories. Again, that was done since basic Dungeons and Dragons, and there's no difference. On a community level, this creativity can be seen in the proliferation of homebrew games made by fans who customize their settings, characters, and rules published by their settings and their likings. Again, we were doing that, and many people were doing that. I never had a problem, and I know, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right. Corporations and collective storytelling may sometimes be at odds, but a thing that does not have to be perfect to be good. As a black woman and a queer, if I had to throw away every piece of friction that did any of my identities dirt, I would have nothing to do but sit quietly in a room. All right. So we have our article by Christopher Thomas, who apparently does not understand the roots of the game, who does not understand that the book is a guideline, who has to push an article about inclusivity, which does never had a problem. But this article absolutely ticked me off when I saw it, when I read it. I felt I wanted to go over here on the channel. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you not agree? You know, constructive comments are always welcome. Click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And stay tuned for more things here on the channel as we go over more of Palladium systems and maybe more articles as I see them. So get off my damn lawn, folks.